When you go out there and you start creating content and you're bleeding, you attract people who either like blood or who will feast on yours. Hello knockouts, Tonya TKO here, and before we jump into the video, I want us to give a thumbs up for my new camera. I decided to upgrade my equipment, and I'm really loving the vibrant colors and the clarity and just the depth that the new camera has. So go on and give a thumbs up for trying new things, for expanding into the future, and for putting one foot in front of the other. All right. So let's jump in. All right, I'm Tonya TKO. I'm a self-love specialist from TonyaTKO.com. I help you learn how to love yourself and each other. On this channel, we use topics as teachable moments for what self-love looks like and what self-love doesn't look like in our own lives and in our own relationships. Today, we're going to be talking about whether or not you are the toxic one in your relationships, how to tell, and what to do about it if you are. We're going to talk about cues and clues to look for and how to create that shift behind the scenes for you. And this is going to require taking a really close look at ourselves. It may not be comfortable, but I'm going to be talking about some things that may be triggering. We're going to be talking about narcissistic parents. We're also going to be referencing a phone call that came in on my live show the other day. And this phone call I see has split the people down the aisles in two different ways. And I'm going to implore you that if you're on one side of the aisle, that you really open up your eyes and really take an assessment of your life and what your relationships look like and how much you yourself have done the work to have healthy relationships in your life. This video, even though we're going to be referencing that phone call, this video is not about that young lady. We're only using that as a reference point for a teachable moment, and I'm hoping that we can look into our own lives and see how this reflects some of our own behaviors. We're going to be talking about the patterns to look for in ourselves and to offer up forgiveness for ourselves and other people who may come into our lives who may perpetuate some of the same types of behaviors. Okay? So we're going to be talking about narcissistic parents. We're going to be talking about abuse, emotional, psychological, etc. So brace yourself as we go forward. Are you the toxic one in your relationships? There are many people out there who are now coming up with this term narcissist, the narcissistic personality disorder, etc. And many of us are saying that our parents were narcissists or the people that we dated were narcissists, etc. There are less than 200,000 cases of actual narcissistic personality disorder that have been diagnosed by psychologists in the United States. So we kind of toss around this term to describe people who have behaviors that we think may be on the list. But if a person is really going to truly be characterized with NPD, they really need to be diagnosed by a licensed professional. And also from what it is that I'm seeing, most of the people who have NPD happen to also be male. So, so a lot of us are like, oh, my mother's a narcissist, this, then the other, etc., etc. And for the amount of people that are going around on the internet saying that their parents or the people that they're dating are narcissists, etc., because there are a lot more people saying that they're narcissists in their lives than are actually documented by licensed professionals. Okay? But let's just take it at face value, because obviously if you're saying that your parent or person you dated is a narcissist, there were things that existed in that relationship that were very unhealthy, very toxic. And I implore you that if you were raised in a household with a person that you describe as being a narcissist, that you definitely do the things that you need to do to make sure that you get the therapy that you need right now. Because you were raised in a household with a person who you learned what love is from a person who was toxic. You learned about your relationship to this world and who it is that you are from a person who is toxic. You learned your own behaviors and patterns and ways of doing things from a person who was very toxic. And if you were raised in a toxic household, I can gather that there are things that you do naturally which are also toxic, and you may not know that what you're doing is toxic. However, if you look at your relationships, Are your relationships healthy relationships? Are you satisfied in your relationships? Do your relationships make you feel fulfilled and uplifted? Are you getting to a newer, higher vibration in these relationships? Or are you seeing the same pattern over and over again? Are you constantly feeling like a victim? Are you constantly feeling victimized? Because I will say this, it is my belief at this point in time that all abuse comes from the victim mentality, that all abuse comes from the space of being a victim, so that you use that as the propelling board to then victimize other people, because you're in this energy where you're like, poor me, look at what happened to me, look at what all these people are doing to me. And instead of healing those things, you perpetuate it. There was something that happened on my broadcast the other day. We were talking about the conquered male patriarchy when a phone call came in, and the person who called in was calling in to talk about personal things that were going on inside of her life, personal relationships that she had, in which she seemed to express was the sole cause for why things went awry in the relationship. So this person was XYZ, this person was that, this, that, and the other, right? And when I spoke with this person about how she was not a victim, that she was a volunteer. These relationships are voluntary relationships that we enter into. And when they start to go cattywonker or whatnot, do we take the lessons from those interactions so that we can offset it going forward in the future? Are we personally healing from the relationships that we had with our parents? And then there were people, I even say that the relationship that you have with your parents is a relationship that you chose, that your energy chose before you even incarnated into this world. So if you chose a parent who is a quote unquote narcissist, there's a reason why you chose that person. And when you take ownership of that, when you take not fault or blame, like I'm the blame, that's victim energy. That doesn't come from an empowered place or an empowered space. I'm not saying I'm to blame for my narcissistic mother, this is my fault. But no, but coming at it from an empowered standpoint and saying, just ask the question, if I chose this, what are the learning lessons for me? Why would I choose this? How can I take this in a way to make myself better and instead of bitter? How do I use this to be able to raise my own vibration and enact my own power? How do I take control of this rather than saying this situation has control of me, these relationships have control of me? What would your life look like if, instead of saying I'm to blame, right, you say, I am the creator of this. I created this. What lessons are here for me in this creation, in this manifestation? And so I was speaking with this young lady, and I expressed to her that she is not a victim. She is a volunteer. She was in that voluntary relationship. Right now, she is volunteering to continue to perpetuate those feelings over and over and over again from that relationship. We talked about her finding healing, getting a therapist, and doing those sorts of things. And for everything that I suggested to her, there was a reason why she couldn't. Oh, the money. Oh, I'm waiting for, this to come through with insurance. Oh, and then even if she were to pay, but most of them are white men and they don't really understand, and this, that, and the other, right? And I implore each and every one of you, especially if you were raised in a toxic home, to get therapy no matter what. No matter what. Find yourself a therapist that you resonate with. Whether you got to pay for it out of pocket, whether you have to circumvent your insurance, whether or not you have to find one online. Just continue to interview and speak with different therapists until you find one who is right for you to help you work through and navigate through your own programming. If you were raised in a toxic environment and toxicity is normal for you, how much of that is still lingering inside of you? If you think about a cucumber in brine, that cucumber becomes a pickle. It's impossible for the cucumber to be like, I'm not, this brine has no effect on me, when you see that it has turned into a pickle. This is what I'm saying. What do your relationships look like? What does your relationship with yourself look like? Are you having healthy interactions? Because what ended up happening is the young lady ended up getting off of the call with me. And there were people, it was split in the comments. There were people who were like, oh, Tonya, you were hard on her. Oh, Tonya, I didn't like your energy towards her. Oh, Tonya, why did you do that to her, right? And then on the other side, it was like that interaction was off. The energy brought into our lesson and our broadcast was off. Thank you, Tonya, for saying what it is that you did. Oh yes, Tonya, she was in victim mode, etc. So it was kind of split. So that's why I'm doing this video, because I want to educate you on the fact that like energy attracts like energy. People who have similar types of trauma will be attracted to one another. They'll identify with it, they'll feel it, and they'll recognize it in another person. And then they'll gravitate to it, and they'll want to comfort and soothe one another in that space. And what ends up happening is that it ends up becoming perpetuated, because then, you know, you acknowledge and you soothe and comfort them, and they tell you what's gone wrong and how this, that, and the other, and you continue to go back and forth in these interactions with other people who are wounded in the same ways, and you end up really not stepping outside of that bubble. But see, what ends up happening is, if you're toxic, when you approach healthy people, they're going to be repelled by you. Healthy relationships are going to be repelled by you. Healthy people, healthy women, healthy men, they're not going to recognize themselves in you, and they are going to rebuke you. So what ends up happening is you're going to find common bond with other people who are also a complement to the energy that you are putting out there. Because what ended up happening is, this young lady, after the broadcast, she started going through the comments, and anybody who disagreed with her and her approach, she went on to tell them about how they don't understand, and this, that, and the other. And the people who agreed, she thanked them, and they hugged and communed in the comments. And then this young lady found the inspiration. This young lady found the inspiration to finally start her YouTube channel. Finally. She found the inspiration, because what she claims happened is, I called in to speak with a self-love specialist, and look at how I was treated. I was dragged in the comments. Look at how I was done. I don't open up myself. And so she was inspired to create a YouTube channel, right? And on this YouTube channel, she made her very first video. And I saw her in the comments telling people, beware, because the stories will be triggering. I explain and I expose some tremendous traumas that I've gone through, etc. Inviting people over to come into this trauma fest, to come into this pain porn, to come into this perhaps pity party, and be there and commune with one another about the terrible things that have befallen us, the terrible things that other people have done to us. And then what also ended up happening is, then she found a new assailant, me. Then she started comparing me to her mother, and the things that her mother had done to her, and how her mother had given her tough love, and then going on about how she still likes my content though, but these are all of the things that Tonya did to her, and how she was now then inspired to create this channel. And I wonder if that energy, that inspiration to create this, the pity platform, whether or not that inspiration, if that same energy could have been used towards seeking therapy, help and assistance for what it is that she may be going through inside, rather than wallowing and soliciting other people who will then come and revel. When you create a platform when you're bleeding, when you go out there and you start creating content and you're bleeding, you attract people who either like blood or who will feast on yours. You attract people who like the blood or would like to feast on yours. So I ask, what would our lives look like if we took ownership of how we got into certain types of interactions? Because I went back and I listened to that video and I was able to see how things progressed the way that they did, how things got to where that they did. We were doing a show about a particular topic when a person called in with their own agenda and their own topic, which was off topic, hoping to then be able to get coaching on the spot in the middle of our lesson about something else. And so these are the things that I'm saying, like, if we're toxic, we could be doing things and we may not know that the things that we're doing are toxic. So we come in with our agenda, with the me, look at me, feel my pain, feel my this is what I need right now, instead of what everybody else needs, what everybody else is doing. We come in and we're like, look at me, give to me, pay attention to me, do this for me. And then if you don't in the ways that is demanded by this person, then all of a sudden now you're the new assailant, right? So we were on a show where we were talking about a different topic. This person came in wanting to vent about their own thing going on, taking us away from what it is that we were all talking about, to now turn all the energy towards this, where she can then perpetuate this story of how this person did this, what this person said. And I'd said several times, listen, I don't want to hear this. Listen, like I said, I've learned from this, and I've learned that there are certain boundaries that I'm going to set up, because there are live shows that I do where we all hold space for one another. And I know going forward, and this is what I'm saying, looking and seeing how you participated in it, and I know going forward that if there's a person who calls in and they're attempting to take the conversation someplace else, I'm going to control the call and tell them when is the more appropriate time for them to call in or be able to get the assistance that they need. That's what I could have done differently. So the young lady calls in and she has this agenda of getting some coaching on the spot. But you see, the difference between therapy and coaching is therapy helps you unpack your suitcase from the past. Coaching helps you pack your suitcase for the future. So my direction is forward. However, when you are in tremendous amount of trauma, you're going to have to go backward and unpack all of that and heal and do all of those things. And then once you want to reach a certain goal, that's when you come to a coach. A coach helps you reach a goal, right? So when we were talking to this young lady, there were so many excuses about why she couldn't this, why she couldn't that, right? And there were several times that I was like, you know what? I even told her that I was going to hang up. This was before we started talking about the internal things that she was going on. When she was complaining about this guy, I was like, stop, I don't want to hear this, right? It was just far too dusty, bringing all of that dust onto the conversation with us, right? And then we attempted to go on from there. But what ended up happening is the conversation then pivoted into, look at all of the abuse that I've received. And listen, what I'm going to say is going to be a little controversial for people who are out there who have experienced trauma, right? There are many of us who use our trauma as a form of manipulating other people to be able to then give us a feeling that we need to feed off of. That pat on the back, the rub of the hair, the pity, these sorts of things. We can use our trauma, like, look at my trauma, look at what was done to me, look at what this person did to me, as a way of manipulating. I would have to ask myself, right? Because the young lady, when she was talking in the comments, she was like, Tonya seemed irritated with me, this, that, and the other. And I have to admit, I was irritated. I was irritated in the beginning of that phone call. I was irritated off the jump by this obfuscating, by this pushing off the responsibility of a voluntary relationship with some guy off onto him and all the things that he did. And not really, I mean, we do our dust hours once a week. But how often do we take a look at how we participated in the dust, the attraction of the dust? Listen, dust and moisture cannot live in the same place at the same time. It can't. And if we are constantly attracting dusties into our lives, we have to take a look and see how and why dust lives around us. So yeah, so I was irritated by that. I was irritated by being taken in a different direction for whatever reason that the person who was calling in wanted to take us into a different direction. And I admit, like I said, I should have controlled that conversation. And when you all see, when people call in and I just disconnect phone calls, please trust me. Not saying that I should have just disconnected that, but I should have gotten off of the line with her, because we ended up spending half an hour on that phone call with her, only for her to turn around and then bleed out into the comments about how wrong she was done, right? So when I ask myself, looking back, if you're communicating with a person and you see that a person is irritated with what it is that, with how the interaction is going, would you then use that as an opportunity to now be like, oh, now I'm going to a person that you have stated you feel is irritated, now I'm going to open up all of my vulnerabilities in a situation, whether or not it may be appropriate or not. And so it's like, that's what I say, we can use our pain as a mode of manipulating a person into hoping. So if we see, oh, this is not garnering the type of response that I want, let me up the ante. Now let me talk about my molestation. Now let me talk about how my ex abused me. Now let me talk about how my mother trampled on me or my father left me. Now let me talk about how I was addicted to drugs. So it's like, if we want to enter into a pity party and the pity is not coming, we up the ante and we're like, now look, now you must pity me. And then if that pity still does not come, what happens? Then you up the ante again, and now you turn on that person. One of the things that ended up being the, let's stop. Because what ends up happening is this. If you were raised in a toxic environment, oh, this is my microphone thing. That's so funny. Okay. Oh, you have to come over and watch this video. Beware though, because you may be triggered. No, you will be triggered from the stories that I tell. It will be very triggering. And then they're not going to recognize themselves in you, and they're going to rebuke. Oh, come on.